Shalom, and welcome to Parsha Talk, the ultimate edition of Parsha Talk for Sefer Breshit. We're so glad you are with us here. We're recording this on Erev Rosh Hashanah, the secular New Year. We want to wish all of our viewers and listeners, we're up to like 15 now, it's amazing, a happy New Year, happy 2021. May the previous year end with all its, let the new year begin with all its blessings. That's, we can adapt that to the second year. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malaman, Highland Park Conservative Temple, Highland Park, New Jersey. And with me, as always, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky at Congregation Anshe Chesed in New York City, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter, Day School, Long Island. It's great to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Shana Tova, everybody.
Shana Tova.
We're gonna end 2020 doing what we do best.
Studying Torah.
Yes, indeed.
And it's, I want to say, with all the glee that we have, this book ends on a downer. But I would like to pose the question to both of you, just as a way of kind of warming up here, going from the creation of the universe to the moment that ends our book. Give me your best cartography of this book. Barry Chesler, I'll start with you.
Okay, old rabbinic saying, Masav vot siman labanim. What happens to the fathers is a sign for the children. So Sefer Breshit begins with 11 chapters, which we might call the mythic history or the mythic story of the universe, which takes us from creation to Migdal Bavel, and then the next 39 chapters plays it out again with a specific Israelite, what we would call a Jewish context. So the story ends in exile. Gan Eden, we're kicked out of exile because of our sin, and we have to work very hard. And where we're left with is the entire Jewish people with the descent of Yaakov and all of his descendants, except for Yosef and his Egyptian children, or children born in Egypt, in exile. And they're about to begin very, very hard work, because almost immediately in Sefer Shemot, which we'll get to next week, is the backbreaking work that sets the story of enslavement in motion. And it seems that we're asked to read the book as a book, number one, and with the two parts that I suggested, but also as a prelude to the next 4 books of the Torah, which is the national story. This is the end of the personal story. With the death of Yosef, the personal story of the ancestors comes to an end, and now we're vested in the people. And Yaakov will become Israel, not only in his name, as happened, I think, in chapter 35 for the first time, but also in terms of the story. We're not going to be concerned with individuals whose family destinies are our destinies anymore.
Jeremy, what is your take on the arc of Breshit?
Yeah, I think Barry well summarized the very beginning of this book, and Jewish history, or the mythic history of Am Yisrael, is about exile and the long journey back to a promised land. So at the very beginning of Breshit, when Adam and Eve are expelled from the garden, they are sent away. And the 2 cherubs are sent, with a fiery flaming sword, lishmor et derech eitz hachayim, to guard the road to the tree of life. Now, what is exactly the function of guarding the road to the tree of life? Is it to guard it with their lahat cherev mitapechet, the flaming twirling sword, to make sure nobody comes to it, or to keep the path traversable, right? Maybe the cherubs are there with the flaming twirling sword to keep that path open, to remind us that there is, in this long, difficult, terrible, often terrible period of exile, which is the natural, so to speak, Jewish condition, there is derech eitz hachayim, the road to the tree of life. And so I think I do think that the Jewish condition has, until the 20th century, been very heavily on our minds and hearts, as a place of exile and a longing for a homeland. Even when people lived in Eretz Yisrael, the vast majority of Jews did not until the 20th century. And that consciousness of exile places its big stamp at the end of this book. You're in Egypt. It's going to be hard. You are going to long for and strive to return to that place where you belong in a different way. And to say that I think it's very interesting to say that there's a vast difference between the land belongs to me and I belong to the land. Perhaps that's a feature of contemporary Jewish consciousness and something that we don't always manage that well. Is the land ours, or do we belong to and belong in the land?
So both of you have convinced me now to revise my views on this, because, to seeing this as the major theme. I take the life and death theme seriously. Obviously, the Breshit begins with God as a life giver, and we have the book ending with Joseph dead in a box in Egypt. And I think the theme of the general theme of human freedom, that God creates the human being perfectly endowed with freedom, and Joseph is as far from free as possible by his life, in the end of his life and his death. He is literally locked, and as we'll see, by the end, all he wants is for his bones to be moved up. And with that, let's move to.
Because I think we have to make the point here that pastorally, certainly, we often refer to the cemetery as the eternal home. We have the expression in Hebrew, Beit Olamim. But Joseph, even though he's in the box, is not at home because his bones cannot rest outside of the land.
So this is a great theme in this parsha, and the opening scene of the parsha is, Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael Lamut. Israel, Jacob knows that he's about to die. He calls Joseph, and he makes Joseph vow that he will be buried in Canaan. Al na tikbereni b'Mitzrayim. Do not bury me in Egypt. V'shachafti im avotai. And Barry, you mentioned that last week. I think it was, that this is where his allegiance lies. But I want to explore this with both of you a little deeply, because it's really a very powerful theme. What does this mean? I want to be buried in Israel. Jeremy.
So for this, I want to go back to Parshat Chayei Sarah for a moment. When Abraham, upon the death of Sarah, has to purchase a grave for her, and he buys Ma'arat Machpelah, the cave of Machpelah in Kiryat Arba, Hebron, and the commentary literature is very rich on the reality that we may acquire all kinds of things. We may acquire livestock, and we may acquire, movable property, and we may be rich or we may be poor. We have all kinds of ups and downs in life. But at a certain level, the only thing that we really own is our grave. In the end of the day, the Dalet Amot of our grave is all that really belongs to us. So Abraham wants this grave. There's wonderful mythic tropes that not only are Abraham and Sarah and Yitzchak and Rivka and Yaakov and Leah buried there, but Adam and Eve are buried there. It is the kind of nexus point between this world and the next world. All that is a rich element in Midrash. But there's a very business-oriented detail in Chayei Sarah that strikes me as incredibly important for understanding the Torah. Abraham pays 400 shekel kesef, 400 silver currency pieces, whatever that is, 400 shekels for that grave. In contrast, later on in 2 Samuel, when David will buy the Beit HaMikdash, the land, the Goren Ornan, the threshing house of Ornan HaYevusi to build the Beit HaMikdash, he will pay 50 shekel kesef. Abraham pays 8 times the amount for this sacred site that David will pay for that sacred site. To me, that is the Torah's dollars and cents, shekel kesef explanation that where our ancestors are buried is really more important than all this ritual stuff. And that feeling that the Torah has that the land is ours not that we possess the land, we belong in the land, we belong to the land because of the lives of our ancestors and the bones of our ancestors.
So it's like MasterCard. But the temple is priceless. So
Well, but the temple also is above ground, and things that are above ground don't last. So the land, in the idiom of the Bible, it has an aspect of eternity about it. When Moses wants to invoke an eternal promise, he invokes the heavens and the earth because they are understood to be forever. Excuse me?
And the fact that that Jacob wants to be interred in the earth in Canaan is eternity. I mean,
it's not because he loved Leah so much. He didn't. Okay, it's not that I have to be beside my dear Leah. It's that we are part of this. And you know what? I mean, without being too graphic here, the human returns to the humus. Adam min ha'adama. Your body, ki afarata ve'elafar tashuv. You are from the earth, and you will be the earth again. And I find this just tremendously moving. There's a Rachel poem, by the way, about the body becoming the earth.
Stay there forever, Jeremy.
Huh?
You won't be moving. You're going to be there forever.
I find this incredibly stationary. Okay.
I think that there's much to be said for that, because if we think honestly, we don't know what's going to happen when we die. So our consciousness of eternity is very much wrapped up in our consciousness of what a grave is and our burial in the ground. That is how we embrace eternity. That's all we know, because we don't know what's going to come next.
Jeremy and I were talking before. We spend a lot of time in cemeteries, and we're connected, I think, in ways that most people are not. That is to say, we're involved quite physically in that, and know the people there through years and years of relationships. We traverse through the rows in the cemetery, and we have our narrative. But that is limited to us and to our generation, to living memory. You can go to cemeteries where nobody gets visited, nobody knows the story. But I think hamakom yenachem, the having a place that is always going to be a source of comfort, whether or not you become part of the earth or the geological cycles, the carbon cycle.
Well, I think that's the theological argument against cremation.
Exactly.
Is that we do need a place, that we need a place where we have literally left our mark. And it's the mark that marks our grave. And we know, and people who come, if they come once a year or once every 1,000 years, that whoever sees it knows that a human being lived with that name.
Indeed.
It's huge.
Let's move to life things, which is the extraordinary scene where Jacob adopts the sons of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim. We could talk about the placing one over the other, which we've done over the past couple of weeks. But talk about the bracha. What does Yisimcha Elohim ki Ephraim echim Manasseh mean? We invoke this in our weekly blessings of our children, of our male children. The text is Vayevarchem bayom ahu lemor. Jacob blesses the two sons, saying, B'cha yivarech Yisrael lemor. Thus shall Israel bless Yisimcha Elohim ki Ephraim echim Manasseh. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. Vayasem et Ephraim lifnei Manasseh. And he does that, sleight of hand, places Ephraim. So, as a blesser, two blessers of children, A, what goes through your mind when you invoke this? B, what does it mean? Why is it here?
I would say a couple of things. First of all, what Ephraim and Manasseh represent is fraternal love. We don't hear of any conflict between them as we do with the other brothers.
Nice.
So that's very important. The other thing is that they have a dual function. They become part of the 12 tribes of Israel, so they're equal to the other 10 tribes, but they're still the grandchildren of Yaakov. And the old saying is, you know that you're a good Jew if you have Jewish grandchildren. And Jacob had Jewish grandchildren. And that was an incredibly important thing. So when we invoke their names on our children, we're asking them to consider that their place is in our family as a recipient of the blessing, but we also want them to remember that they have to extend that blessing to their children as well.
So in other words, it's about continuity.
It's about continuity and incredible hope.
Oh.
That even though we can't know the future, we dream about it and we can vest our blessings in it.
Jeremy, what's your take?
First of all, want to note that our friend related to Barry by marriage, Carol Chesler, posed the question to us about about what's up with these two characters, Ephraim and Manasseh, and I don't know exactly what she had in mind in the question. Why is it that they are the paradigms for blessing? But I would observe that in a bunch of years working in American Jewish life, as we close out the book of Breshit, I find that a lot of people treat the characters in Breshit like they think there's something about the individuals. Because listen, we're American Jews. We live in a society that wants to know, and we've learned to read, contemporary literature and watch contemporary films. And there's something about the personality of each and every, if it's good, a work of literature, if it's good, a work of, film, you'll get a sense of personality. You'll know who Charles Foster Kane was, or you'll know who Vito Corleone was, or you'll know who Scarlett O'Hara was, or something like that. You'll know who Clarissa Dalloway is, and you'll know something about the individual. I don't really think that's so true about the characters in Breshit, okay? I don't know if Abraham was, quick-tempered or funny. I don't know if Isaac was musical. I don't know if Jacob was, I don't know anything about them. And I certainly don't know anything about Ephraim and Manasseh. I do think that these characters, and maybe this aligns with what Barry said, they represent paradigms for, perhaps connected descendants, connected progeny. We might say, and I'll maybe Elliot, you'll say some of the stuff you said before the call began about the experiences of the exile-born, yeah. or Ephraim and Manasseh. They are the children of a parent who has endured exile. Do you want to expatiate on that?
I just, this was just a brainstorm basically based on the question, which is the two of them are outsiders to the unit. And there is something about being the outsider that you always have to strive. And that, as we know, part of creativity comes from seeing yourself not necessarily within a certain paradigm. And that the blessing of Israel is the blessing of the Jewish people is always to see yourself as somewhat differentiated from the rest of the world, and to have that as part of your self-consciousness in the most beautiful, creative, and living way. I think that might be encoded in that blessing. That's just a reach, but it somehow makes sense. I like the idea of continuity. I like the idea that the fraternal love idea is, I think, a beautiful. I mean, in a way, it satisfies the whole arc of the book of Breshit too, because Breshit is all about sibling rivalries, and here is the one pair of siblings that we don't have any indication of any rivalry. I think.
I also, I want to return to the fact that these two children who, whatever, maybe they don't know their father as Yosef ben Yaakov. Maybe they know their father as Tzafnat Paneach.
Yeah.
Maybe they know their father by his Egyptian name, his Egyptian power, and they've learned that there is some other identity, some national story or some familial story that they can remain part of. I don't know if we mentioned this last time or not, but there's a midrash that says that when Joseph is listening, or two times ago, Joseph is listening to his brothers speak Hebrew. That he's speaking through a translator, and they don't know that he knows their Hebrew. And the translator is Menashe. Okay, the child whose name means, according to the Bible, Joseph named him Menashe because Menashe, Nun Shin Yud, means forget. So I named him Menashe because I forgot all my previous pain, and yet he taught that boy Hebrew. He gave that boy a legacy and an inheritance to keep him connected to the identity that he, for plenty good reasons, wanted to forget, but he didn't really forget it. He kept it alive and taught this child the language necessary to access it.
So we have to come back to that theme at the
I want
end.
to add one more thing here. So when they appear before Jacob at one point, it says, Vayar Yisrael b'nei Yosef, he sees the children of Yosef, Vayomer mi Elah, which we often translate as who are they, or who are these? And it's linked with the subsequent verse, which mentions that Jacob, now very much like his father Isaac, cannot see. But I think it's better understood not who are they, but whose are they? Are they your sons, Joseph the Egyptian, or are they my sons, Jacob the Israelite? And when he's assured that they're his sons, then he gives them the blessing. And then he also crosses his hands because that blessing goes to the younger. I think I may have mentioned this last week, that I think that this is Jacob's recognition that, in fact, he deserved the blessing that he thought he took by stealth from his brother, but that it was always intended for him to get that blessing. And that's why Ephraim gets the blessing as well.
That's nice. That's nice. So let's turn now to the moment that Jacob died. In part of the Parsha deals at length with a testament to the brothers, to all the children. Very long, very poetic passage, which, every verse practically has pages and pages of commentary and midrashim on it. It's so poetic. But let me get your comments on this verse. Vayechal Yaakov letzavot et banav. Jacob, finished his testament. Vayasaf raglav el hamita, puts his legs in the bed. Vayikva, he expires. Vayasef el amav. Okay, Jeremy.
What doesn't it say?
Vayamot.
What doesn't it say? It doesn't say, it says Vayikva, he expired, but it doesn't say Vayamot, and he died. So we have the wonderful, this is just one of the, this is one of the top 10 midrashic themes, is the Yaakov Avinu lo met. Our ancestor Jacob never really died. It didn't say he died. And the Talmud has a wonderful little snarky line and says, so why did they embalm him and put him in a coffin? And it's no. The other voice comes back in the Talmud and says, yo, I'm being poetic here. He didn't die. Mazaro kayam afu kayam. As long as his descendants endure, so too he endures. And I think one of the great, obviously Shmot has a big ending, and Vayikra has a big ending, and Devarim certainly has a big ending. No, Numbers fizzle out a little bit more perhaps, but Bereshit has a big ending. The Talmudic tradition calls it Sefer HaYashar, right? The book of the upright. We have these titanic, what would you say? Like these are huge characters.
Colossal characters.
And they pass from the scene. Okay. And there's a way in which if you're a Jew who inherits their legacy, you might say, oh man, this is terrible. We're past there. The great ones are gone. Actually, the thing to stress is the continuity. It's never over. It's never quite over. As long as you and I exist in Jewish community, Yaakov Avinu is still here.
Still here. How about the scene then of the procession to Canaan? Joseph, I'm going to be critical about Joseph. Joseph doesn't have, the sense of freedom that he needs to just come and go. He has to go petition Pharaoh. he slightly changes the wording. He says to Pharaoh, my father made me swear to him to bury him in Canaan. Doesn't say, don't bury me in Egypt. And Pharaoh says, Ale, go up and bury. And Pharaoh sends the entire apparatus of the government, everything, the Congress, the Supreme Court, the entire cabinet goes up with Joseph to Canaan. And I want to just stop and freeze that frame for a moment. Barry, you want to just weigh in on that?
We've talked a little bit about this. I think that there are two trains running on parallel tracks. I think on one train, we look at this and we could say this is great kavod on Pharaoh's part. This isn't his family, but this is an important person to him, and therefore his dead get all the honor that I could give, which is everyone. Or we could take the galut mentality. They're out to get us. They don't trust us. And therefore they send everyone to make sure that Joseph comes back. But if they were really that concerned that Joseph wouldn't come back, why would they let him go in the first place? So I think, one of the things that's become clearer as we've talked our way through Sefer Breshit is the importance of the theme of exile and what it does to us as individuals and as a people. And we never quite get the exile out of us, it seems. And, I've been thinking a lot about the modern state of Israel and the parallel tracks of the Zionist dream. Do we want to be a light unto the nations, or do we want to be a nation like any other nation? And we see in the modern state of Israel that, mostly now they've opted for that second one. We want to be like any other nation. And that's problematic. We can understand it, obviously, even if we don't particularly appreciate that form of Zionism, but it's still problematic, because where is this idea that we stand for more than ourselves? And I think that coming back to Joseph, when the Egyptians accompany him, then he's standing for more than himself. I think it's a positive thing.
I think that proposition is debatable, that there are significant sectors of the Israeli population that are actively engaged in the question of what does it mean to be a Jewish state. But I think, again, amplifying the theme of exile, very, very powerful theme, but there's also a sense of power politics, major geopolitics going on. I was mentioning that the movement of Pharaoh, the whole government basically, into Canaan is the equivalent of flying your bomber over the Persian Gulf. It's a show of force to the local population, given that the rival power is Babylonia, and that the people in between are going to be shuffled back and forth between these two poles.
Right. But we're reading a Hebrew account.
Yeah.
We're not reading the Babylonian account.
I understand.
Right? They might have completely ignored this because, let the Egyptians have their fun.
Okay. We're running out of time, but we got to talk about the final scene. The final scene is where so the brother, they come back, and the brothers say to Joseph, Daddy told us when he made us promise that we would ask for forgiveness, right? Ana sana pesha achecha v'chatatam. Jeremy, give me your best shot, best sermon on this.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, this is a hard one. The brothers, the guilt is so indelible, right? Like, they know how badly they actually behaved. And I guess they sort of feel that they've made it work, and they've been saved alive, and they've managed to live a few years in Goshen, but they can't quite believe that Yosef actually has it in his heart to, like, literally forgive them. And they think that only Yaakov's presence, so as not to cause more pain to him, has prevented him from slaughtering them all. And so they make up this lie. The brothers, they lied at the beginning of the Joseph story. They can lie at the end of the Joseph story. They make up this lie. And Joseph once again is moved to tears. Says, no. Really, I do forgive you. And I think that all of us can think, those of us who are in rabbinic lives and see lots of families, but those of us who aren't in rabbinic lives, just in our own families, in our own lives, know that sometimes it's easier to forgive others than to forgive yourself. And the brothers clearly have not really internalized forgiveness towards their own wrongdoing.
So Leonard Cohen, he said, you want it darker. You want it darker.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go darker here.
Okay, good.
I'm going to go darker and say, Vayefk Yosef, he cries out of exasperation. He still can't believe they're playing this game. It crushes him. It crushes him, and I think within Yosef there is really a terrible crisis. I think gnawing at him is this whole idea that he has brought everyone down here, and that he can foresee that it's going to go south for the people, and there is a despair here. The last line, and we're going to jump to it, is not happy. This is not a happy ending. And that he himself wants his bones taken up. Why? Barry, you're smiling there. I know you've got something to say here.
So I have a few things to say, as is often the case. So I think that the part of the problem with the brothers and their disbelief at Joseph is that they cannot imagine that Joseph can forgive them. And therefore they assume that he can, because their incapability is projected onto Joseph. Joseph, on the other hand, is called, at least in one part of the rabbinic tradition, Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph the righteous. He can forgive, so he doesn't have a problem saying that other people can be forgiven as well. But I think that what we're really left with is the struggle of who Joseph really is. Yeah. And how we understand Joseph really is going to shape how we understand Bnei Yisrael, meaning both his brothers, the brothers, the sons of Jacob, and also the entire people as well. Joseph did great in Galut, but he's left homeless at the end of the book.
He wants to go back. He wants.
By the way, I want
to go back to a physical place, or does he want to go back to a chronological place? Is he looking to find his father again? Because that's where he had the father that he loved and thought loved him.
I want to just instantiate in a kind of a Kabbalistic, midrashic way what Barry just said. Joseph says, Hatachat Elohim ani, am I, literally the pshat is, am I in place of God? Am I in place of Elohim? I'm not going to punish you for your sins. This is the human realm. This is for God to punish you. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill you. The brothers say to him, okay, well, you're slaves. By the way, Joseph has enslaved lots of people. He's enslaved the entire Egyptian people. So the brothers can perhaps be forgiven for thinking that Joseph's way of dealing with the people who threaten him is to enslave them. But he says, no. Hatachat Elohim ani, am I in place of Elohim? But there's a standard way of reading that Yud He Vav He means Midat HaRachamim, God of mercy, and Elohim means Midat Hadin, God of judgment. And in Kabbalistic mythology, the sort of left-hand powers of the spherotic tree or the Godhead are the powers of judgment, and the right-hand powers are those of mercy. Yosef is the Sphira of Yesod. And so Kabbalistically, when he says, Hatachat Elohim ani, do you think that I am under the influence of those powers of judgment? Am I beneath Elohim? Is that what's influencing me? I'm not under the powers of influence. I'm not influenced by the powers of judgment, punishment, harshness. I am under the powers of grace and forgiveness and mercy. that sort of works Kabbalistically. The Yesod is with Tiferet, is with Dat, is with Keter. But what's interesting to me about that is that then it becomes characterological or typological. There are in this world powers of divine judgment, and this is not one of them. Okay, this is the power of grace. You guys, you have come to the power of grace. To your great surprise, you have come to the place of forgiveness. So accept it. And that's kind of hard for them to accept, but
So let's have a final word on Breshit. This is, you know, a sad ending. It's got so many different layers. The darker layers are the layers of grace. I think we'll leave that for our viewers and listeners to debate over the Shabbos lunches. But we're setting the stage for another set of stories here. And
So we could say it's been a great beginning, but we're ready for the next chapter.
Jeremy,
all I got to say, and we are literally, to our many viewers who will be watching us for I don't even know how long to come, we are literally spending our final hours of 2020 talking about this Parsha. All I can say is Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek.
Chazak, chazak,
strong and strengthen each other. Breshit, and off to Shmot next week. Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Enjoy and have a happy and safe and sweet secular New Year.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.